thanks for being here. I'm Nicolas from Orbit, and today we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about communities, and we're even going to talk about the solar system, and to talk about love. But first, I wanted to give you all a quick shout out for the amazing weather I've had this week, because I'm flying in from Paris, where it's like 2 degrees, freezing, raining, gray, dark, and this is just fabulous. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. Without further ado, at Orbit, we're all about community. And why do we think communities are so important to everything we do? And we also think that you should be about community too. Does this sound okay? Yeah. Having a strong community around your product, your company, your open source project can help you through many things. It can help you gather invaluable user feedback or bug reports, friction from your users, etc. It can also help you in hiring. For example, before I was an Orbit employee, I was an Orbit community member. The CTO, Josh, who became my friend, introduced me to Orbit, what they did, etc., the model, invited me to events, etc., and that led me to actually becoming an Orbit employee. It can also lead you to, sales lead, qualified sales lead, because your community members are your first advocates. They know your products, they know your team, they're at ease in that space that feels inclusive, etc. And so it can be a great fuel to your sales efforts. And lastly, and most importantly, community is all about building meaningful relationships with your community members. So, making friends along the way, making contacts, knowing who the people are, how can you help them? How can you be most helpful both in your product and in general? And so, yeah, we do believe with everything that communities will be a big part of the shift in the next few years. But thinking about community, it can be pretty hard. It's like a nebulous thing, a community. What is it? Is it people? How do you, think about people in your community? And this is why, even before Orbit, the product and company was born, we built and thought about what we call the Orbit model. The Orbit model is a way to think about your community. And this is where the solar system comes in. If you imagine your community as a solar system with like the sun at the middle and then solar, stars or planets orbiting around it, this is very akin to a community. The center of the system will be your team, your core team, or your company or your product. This is like the core of the system. And everybody who is orbiting around would be your community members. And why is that such a helpful representation of communities? It's because in a community, not every member is active in the same way or in the same, cadence or frequency, etc. You might have people that, stumble upon your GitHub repository by chance, star it or follow you on Twitter because of a funny tweet that you did. But it might stop there at the beginning. So those members would be at the edge of your solar system. We call it Orbit 4, and those would be the explorers. They know that you exist, but they aren't really involved into your communities yet. But as the community member journey grows, maybe that star will transform into a pull request or an issue that they will open on the repo. Maybe they will sign up to your Slack or Discord community and introduce themselves, ask questions, answer questions from other community members, etc. And while doing this, they'll become more active and they might jump from one orbit, the outer orbit, to one of the inner orbits. And so, for example, here, what we can see is what we call the Orbit 1. It's the innermost orbit of your community members. And you might have seen that concept applied in many different communities. Some call them ambassadors. Is map all the activities that a member can do in your community. So opening a PR, posting a message on Slack, following you on Twitter, tweeting at you, answering a question on Discourse. And every one of these activities will increase the love of this member. And so love is the fuel that propels a member from one orbit to the next. But now, community, they aren't monolithic. In this day and age, they are really distributed among many platforms. You might have a GitHub repo with some open source code in it. Maybe if you're an open source company or a closed source company, but with open source components. So GitHub is a big part of your community. But you might also have a Slack or a Discord where your community member and team can chat, ask questions, share pics of cute cats on social random or something. You can also have a discourse instance for like in-depth Q&A. Twitter is another big part. You can have an internal forum that people use, etc. So what Orbit will do is, instead of having all these isolated, little islands of community, it will tie them all together, bring the data from members and activities from all those different places and pull them into Orbit. How does that look like in practice? Here, what I'm showing you is the Orbit community, our user and member community. I do want to note that I'm filtering by teammates because I don't want to show personal information of community members. But we have a community on Discord, we have a discourse, we have Twitter, GitHub, etc. And what you can see here is a list of members in our community. It happens that these are all teammates. I want to highlight a few quick things that you can do and see within Orbit. The first one is that when you get the list of members, these are ordered by the number and the impact of the activities that they did. So for example, if I look at Sherry, I can see that she's been active on a few different platforms. She's very active on Discord. Rosie Sherry is our community lead at Orbit. She's really active on Discord and Twitter. And the custom you see here is because we're piping activities from Orbit, the product, into Orbit, the platform. So if somebody invites a teammate on Orbit, it will create an activity for us, and we can track that within Orbit. If I look at myself now, I'm a software engineer at Orbit, so my pattern of activities will look a bit different. For example, I'm more active, this might be a bit small, I'm sorry. I'm much more active on GitHub than I am, for example, on Twitter. You can get at a glance more deep dive information about a specific member. If I take myself as an example, this is a summary of the activities on the different platforms I did in Orbit. In August, for example, of this year, I was quite active on GitHub. I did 17 activities. It can be pull requests, issue comments, etc. But in September, my focus changed a bit, and I did a lot of support work, and I'm much more active on Discord in this thing. And so for a single community member, you can get at a glance a lot of information about where they're active, what kind of activities they're doing. Are they more like chatting or contributing to the open source repo? You can also tag members, as you can see on the top right corner. You can see the topics and language that they're interested in from GitHub. You can also have, at a glance, information about that person. For example, if they're active on Twitter, you can get their Twitter username and platform here. This is my Twitter and GitHub. This is my Twitch account, etc. So from all the platforms that we connect to, we can pull data and enrich your members' profiles. One other cool use case about Orbit is learning more about the actual activities, where they happen and how they happen. So for example, I switched tabs here and I went to the activities one. It shows you a feed-like interface for knowing everything that happens in your community. And one thing I want to show is that you can actually, I didn't reset that. You can actually deep dive into what kind of activities. Is the network working? Ba-ba-bam. I think I might have an internet problem. Okay, yeah. You can actually filter on the different activities a member you care about. So if I want to see all pull requests that were open on a specific repo, I can see that. Let me do it. Groups. Let's check the Orbit browser extension that we built. It should be here. And if I apply, I will see the list on the left to be mimicking the filter that I put in. So if you want to learn about the patterns on a certain repo, a certain Twitch channel, etc., you can totally do it within Orbit. We also have reporting built in right within Orbit to know how your community is growing, where people are active by location or company or tag, and a whole other bunch of reporting dashboards already for you to use and report back on. Thank you very much. This was Orbit. I'm Nicolas. We have a booth over there with cool stickers and nice travel pouches. If you didn't get one already, please come by. We're hiring at a lot of places, including DevOps, SRE, and software engineer. So yeah, please feel free to drop by. And thank you very much.